We will call the council work session for February 3rd, 2025 to order. The city manager, Miles Braswell, will go over the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council, and members of the public. Before I get started, I do want to point out that we have a new person that is sitting up front with us tonight. Laura Wolf is the new city clerk. She accepted the position this past week, and so I want to welcome her on board. And she'll be working with our deputy clerk in the transition period, so welcome, Laura. For the consent agenda, you have 5 items. The first item, number B1, is the regular meeting minutes from Monday, January 6th. The second item is a renewal from the Gaston Home Consortium Agreement. This is where the city of Gastonia manages the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Home Investment Partnership Program. And it's for collective of local governments where smaller communities don't meet the minimum threshold for funding, and so they move it to a consortium. And this agreement provides down payment assistance to the residents and the rehabilitation loan program managed through the city of Gastonia. That's item number B2.
And I have some edits to that, but
correct, and I'll send those over to the city of Gastonia.
okay, thank you.
Item B3 is the approval of declaration of surplus vehicles. You'll find a memo of various equipment that's listed here, but there's particularly 6 items that I'd like to point out that are surplus from NCDOT that we had received years ago. And this equipment was used to plow and treat streets during inclement weather events. During our past 2, we tried to get some of these vehicles operational. They're in poor condition, so I said let's surplus them and get rid of these items so that we can move forward with item B4, which is a budget amendment to purchase 2 salt spreaders, 2 plows, and salt and necessary attachments for our vehicles. So that's item B4. And then item B5 is from the police department for 2 bulletproof vest grant application requests, one from the League of Municipalities and the other through the Patrick Leahy Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program with the federal government. And those are the 5 items for consent.
All right, thank you, Miles. Any questions on any items on the consent agenda? Just one on the surplus equipment. Just to clarify, was that equipment ever operable, or was this the first time we ever tried to use it and it didn't work? The stuff we got from NCDOT?
I think it was operable the last snow event that we had in 2022. Since that time, it's not.
Are we going to complain to them about it, or is it just
We'll listen.
okay? All right, very good. Well, if there is nothing else on the consent agenda, we can move ahead to the regular meeting, and I will call the regular meeting of Belmont City Council for February 3rd, 2025 to order. If everyone will please rise for the invocation, I will give the invocation tonight. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed in our community. We ask for your wisdom in our deliberations tonight, that you continue to show your favor to the city of Belmont and all those who are here to transact business before us. We continue to pray for those in Western North Carolina who continue to experience the effects of Hurricane Helene this winter. And we also ask that you keep our former Mayor Charlie Martin in your prayers as well, as he continues to experience some health challenges. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
And Councilman Alex Zooks will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Jim. Please repeat after me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. We'll begin with several recognitions and acknowledgments tonight. First of all, I would recognize our interim fire chief, Alex Hardy, who will present the annual fire department awards and recognition.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm pleased to be here this evening to recognize our annual Fire Department Award recipients. Each year, a request internally for nominations is submitted to all fire department staff. The two awards given are Firefighter of the Year and Fire Officer of the Year. The Firefighter Award is of the engineer rank and below, and the Fire Officer Award is of the captain rank all the way up to the fire chief. The nominations for each award are compiled and sent to a third party for the selection process. Then they select it. This method removes all bias and puts integrity into the award selection process. So for our first award, it's going to be the Firefighter of the Year, and I'm going to read one of the nominations that was used to select the recipient. I am writing this to recommend Engineer Muse for City of Belmont 2024 Firefighter of the Year. In the past year, Engineer Muse has taken on extra responsibilities to move the City of Belmont Fire Department forward. He was tasked with rewriting the boating operation policy and checkoffs for Marine 43. He oversaw the checkoff process for members of the fire department and taught a boating class. Captain Blair Gribble even complimented Engineer Muse's teaching abilities, stating, quote, "He did a good job instructing more advanced people, but also did great breaking it down and helping my less experienced boaters learn and benefit from the training," end quote. I've seen this in-house during company training. He can break down subjects and relay information to people in a way that is easy to understand. I sometimes struggle with this. I know that Engineer Muse's long-term teaching goal is to obtain his live burn instructor certification. Engineer Muse also sits on turnout gear, ladder truck, and rescue truck committees. Sitting on these committees require a lot of off-duty time and effort, coming to meetings, trying to determine what will better suit us for our day-to-day operations. On 6/4/2024, Ladder 43's crew was out on a gas leak. While we were on the gas leak, Station 43 was dispatched to a possible house fire at 2500 Ashley Court. Engineer Muse was assigned to engine 431. He was the only person on that engine that day. Engineer Muse was the first arriving fire unit on the scene. He checked on the scene with two-story structure, heavy smoke showing from the Charlie side of the house. Once he was able to position his apparatus, he noticed that the deck of the house was on fire. He pulled an 1 3/4 attack line to the rear of the house, went back to the truck, and then charged the line. By this time, Firefighter King had arrived and started to extinguish the fire. Engineer Muse then focused his efforts on obtaining a water supply. He deployed approximately 200 feet of LDH to the closest hydrant. This was one firefighter trying to complete the role of 3 positions. Checking on the scene and determining the point of attack is what a company officer would do. Deploying the attack line, the firefighter. Charging the attack line, and obtaining a water supply, the engineer. He was able to do so without panicking. He kept a clear head, focused on what needed to be done, and completed the job. These are just a few reasons as to why Engineer Muse deserves Firefighter of the Year. He has become a leader on A shift that the younger members of the crew look up to. I do consider myself lucky to have him on my ship. At this time, I would like to call upon Caleb Muse to accept the award for 2024 Firefighter of the Year. Let it also be noted that since the nomination, Engineer Muse has been promoted to the rank of Fire Captain and leads Engine 44A. Our next award is for Fire Officer of the Year. I'll read one of the nominations that was used to select the recipient. To whom it may concern, I would like to officially nominate Captain Blair Gribble for the 2024 Fire Officer of the Year at Belmont Fire Department. From the beginning of his fire service career with the city of Belmont, he has given more than is required. He constantly completes extra tasks that are not required of him. He is thorough and top-notch in the areas of knowledge and tactics. As a leader, he builds his crew up and regularly gives positive feedback on what they do. He demands the best from everyone around him and will do whatever it takes to help reach the goal of optimum performance. Captain Gribble utilizes his talent of teaching in his daily leadership roles. His goal is for team, not for self. If there is a weak link, then it is the team's job to strengthen it. Captain Gribble regularly aids with in-service training of all crews and teaches during his days off with Gaston College as a fire instructor. He has successfully completed his North Carolina live burn qualification. This is an extra certification that has hours of work that must be put in for its successful completion. This allows him to further aid in the training the firefighters safely and effectively. He also stood up the new record management system for the Belmont Fire Department and was in charge of teaching others how to use it. Captain Gribble completed his bachelor's degree in a fire-related field along with multiple fire officer certifications. He served as president of the Gaston County Firefighters Association in 2024 and represented that association on the Gaston County Fire Commission. He's an assistant chief at Agriculture Center Volunteer Fire Department in addition to all the other responsibilities he holds. There is no doubt that these few snippets of Captain Gribble's tenure with the city and the organization should award him the City of Belmont Fire Officer of the Year 2024. At this time, I'd like to call upon Captain Blair Gribble to accept the award for 2024 Fire Officer of the Year. Our third and final award is the Chiefs Award. Fire Chief Todd Davis, who is now retired, created this award in 2023 to outline and recognize extraordinary work inside and or out of the city's departments. This could be an employee or citizen within the community giving back or displaying meritorious conduct. I would like to read the nomination for this award. On November 21st, Fire Program Support Specialist King and Fire Inspector Tyler Dixon went to 864 Holly Avenue at Lofton and Montcross Apartments and spoke about fire prevention as well as using a fire extinguisher. On December 8, 2024, crews were dispatched to 864 Holly Avenue in reference to an apartment fire. Once Engine 43 arrived on scene and began investigating, they found moderate smoke in the hallway on the first floor. During their investigation, they were able to find the apartment and determine that the grease fire had already been extinguished upon arrival. Once crews completed searching the building and removing the smoke, they were able to speak with residents. After speaking with the residents of the apartment building, they were able to locate the resident who extinguished the fire with a fire extinguisher. Resident Yvonne Zarza heard the fire alarm go off, and once she was in the hallway, she noticed that it was because of her neighbor's apartment. She then, without hesitation, remembered what she learned from the training and was able to extinguish the fire with the fire extinguisher. Not only did she extinguish that fire, but she also made sure that her neighbor got out of her apartment. Wouldn't let her go back in. At this time, I'd like to call upon Yvonne Zarza to accept the 2024 Chiefs Award.
All right, well, congratulations again to all the award recipients. Our next recognition will be the Years of Service recognition to Walter Dixon of the Planning and Zoning Board, and I'll recognize our Planning Director, Tiffany Farrow, to present this award.
Thank you. We were both controlling. Okay, so thank you and good evening, City Council and members of the public. I am really honored this evening to recognize Walter Dixon, who has represented the City of Belmont as our ETJ Planning Board member for a total of 14 years. Walter Dixon first joined the Planning Board back in 2003 and continued to serve as a Planning Board member for a full 2-year term, ending in 2009. And then after a short break, he was appointed back to Planning Board again in 2017, where he served an additional 2 years of service on this board. During his latest tenure, Walter Dixon's leadership was recognized by his peers, and he was appointed as the board chairman in 2019 and 2020. He continued membership on this board even after his term expired voluntarily until the ETJ position and seat could be filled. And Walter officially ended his terms of service in December of 2024 in order to be able to enjoy his retirement. The planning staff, as well as the entire planning board, would like to formally thank Walter Dixon for his years of service to our community and for all of his invaluable efforts to move us forward. So with that, I would hope that you would please join me in recognizing Walter Dixon. Thank you, and a certificate of appreciation. Yeah, I know. And a small gift as well. All right,
Well,
thank you so
very
much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you, Walter.
I hate to leave Parks, he's the only one in here.
If you'd like to say any words, you're happy to, but we really appreciate all that you've done. Thank you. Oh, you're good. Thank you.
You want to take a kid picture? Come on up here, coming up here.
All right. So we're going.
Where we
going? Okay. Perfect.
Thank you, Walter. The only thing I would say, I'm joking with Parks, but you don't know how lucky you are to have the planning staff we have. They put in, y'all know the hours that they put in and end up getting a good deal for the city in most part on what they do. And so I appreciate your time and the ability to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of serving with Walter for a couple of years, and Walter was a great colleague on the planning board. I also remember the meeting where you were appointed chair, and you were appointed chair because you were not at the meeting.
And I never missed that.
Thanks again, Walter. All right, with the recognitions and acknowledgments completed, I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda.
Motion to set the agenda.
Motion made by Alex. Second. Seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is set. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Jason. Seconded by
I
Charlie.
guess with your adjustments, right?
Sure,
Yes,
yes.
of what you're.
With the amendments to the home consortium.
Yes.
All right, a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is adopted as modified. That leads us to the regular agenda. First up, we have public comment. As you can see, speakers have up to 3 minutes. Please provide your name and address. Be respectful of city council staff and the public. There is generally not discussion and debate among council and the speakers. However, council may, if warranted, ask city staff to follow up with the speaker on his or her concern. All right, so we have 3 individuals signed up for public comment. First is Greg Mull.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Greg Mull. I live at 5005 Samuel Pinckney Drive. I've been a resident of Belmont for 22 years. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I had two items I wanted to discuss in regards to our world-class recreation facility we have right down the hill, it's the best in Gaston County. The two items that I wanted to discuss are pickleball nets, and I just learned tonight from Laura that one has already been purchased, and that they've got approval to buy 3 more. So I appreciate that. The nets that we've been playing with are not regulation. They're an embarrassment, honestly. I've had at least 3 people that aren't city residents that tell me they would join the recreation center to play pickleball, except for the pickleball nets being substandard. So if we get those 3 people in, that's gonna more than pay for those nets. So thank y'all for considering that. The other item that I wanted to speak about is the first gym near the parking lot. I'm not sure if that's 123 or 124. The windows up top, when the sun comes up, that comes in and puts a very bad glare on the floor. So it's not only for pickleball, I assume that it impacts the basketball games that go on in those gyms as well. I'm concerned that at some point someone could get maybe the sun blind in and then get hit in the face with a ball or something like that, would be an injury that could be avoided. So request that you would consider putting some blinds up on those windows. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I feel like we have discussed that issue before, Miles. Is there
The blinds? or the-
yeah, with the blinds?
For this building, we had blinds installed this year through the budget process. It was not budgeted for the city rec center, so through the budget process, if we need blinds for that, we could do it through the budget process.
I thought we did, but I think it was with Barry. I don't know.
Okay. No, it's probably more, yeah.
I'd have to look, I think they're, the way I understand, like the ones in here that we just installed were specialized sizes. I can imagine for the windows over at the rec center. It's not standard. Yeah, it's not a standard size, so we'll check in the blinds on the windows.
Thank you. Next, Martha Stowe.
Martha Stowe, 3132 Shadowview Landing. I'm here tonight because I received a surprise, a stop sign in my yard at 31 Oak Street. This is my husband's grandmother's house. We plan to move there when we downsize. The neighbors, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but also the neighbors. The neighbors requested a speed hump, not stop signs. Now, there are 9 stop signs for 3 three-way stops as of Sunday. I understand that something maybe has been moved, which is at least a step forward. You've set a precedent by putting the stop signs there. As far as the T intersections, now it appears that you should have possibly a 3-way stop at all the T intersections in the area, so I'm sure you're going to get more requests for that. Since you changed the policy twice and Oak Street still did not qualify, I would ask that you at least change the policy a 3rd time to notify the property owners like myself who have a stop sign put in their yard or perhaps a speed hump put adjacent to their property, because it's not a nice price to have. I spoke with 2 engineers who made suggestions that I would like for you to consider. One, to consider a speed table similar to what they have in Cramerton, but smaller because it has grooves. The other option would be to have the small speed humps like you see in Adams Bluff. Both engineers indicated to me that they would provide what you want as far as the traffic mitigation, that kind of thing, but have a minimum drainage impact. So that's what I would like for you to at least look at. Additionally, for my own self, I will have the option to park in front of the house where we're planning to live, because all the parking is taken now with regard to the stop sign. I have limited mobility with regard to steps and hills with all the foot issues I have, and it's medically documented. So I'm not playing pitiful here, but if I'm going to get my groceries into the house, I'm going to have to illegally park at the front of the house, go in, and then move my car. I'll do that. But the other option I have is to put a parking pad on that side, which once again, that's fine, I can do that. It's not a matter that's going to cost so much. But what that means is I'll be backing into that 3-way intersection, which is not a safe situation. So my request is to please make a site visit to look and see what effect it has on my property and the neighborhood, because I'm speaking with them as well. They, once again, wanted a speed hump, and stop signs are not gonna give you the same situation. But if you'll please look at those. Remember too, this is a 100-year-old neighborhood, so you don't have the same situation with long driveways and enough space for cars. So a lot of the people in the neighborhood do use some on-street parking, and that's gonna be very limited. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our last speaker is John Crane.
Good evening, I'm John Crane, I live at 587 Catawba Street, and I'm here to offer support for the compost program, which I know is being considered again tonight, whether or not to go forward with the program. I know that the staff has recommended not funding the program because of lack of a budget lack. And I would just urge the council to consider, for a nominal fee, would allow us to keep waste out of our landfill. And I know as myself and the neighbors that are using the compost program, that has made a significant reduction in the amount of household waste that we end up throwing in the garbage that's taken to a landfill. So I hope that you can find the money. I appreciate that you piloted the program, and I hope you can find money to continue it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public comment for the evening. Next item on the agenda is C2, 2024 Police Annual Report Update. And to present this report and update, I recognize our Police Chief, Corky Falls.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council.
Good evening.
So I'll start off with the 2024 data tables. Not really going to go into every single detail, but I'll just go over some of the ones that are relevant. Our DWIs, we've made more DWI arrests. Our total traffic stops went down just a little bit. Our citations went up. We had a little more increase in traffic collisions. We'll move on down. We did have one fatality. We had two last year. I-85, in a combination of I-85 north and south, overall the statistics are down as far as collisions on I-85. Moving on to our Vice Narcotics unit, as you can see, we did 8 search warrants this time. We did 26 last time. We had 76 felony charges last time and 33 this time. And you can see the difference in the drugs that we seized. What I would like to bring your attention to is the seized currency. So we had $1,322,293, and then this year we had $2,121,065. And just to let you know, the police department don't get all that money, as I've stated in prior years. We get a portion of that money based on how much time our detectives put in and work the investigation, and that's usually a shared fund. And just an example of, we have $500,000 in cash a couple of years back from the hotel from some cartel investigations we were doing, and we received $14,000 for that in our asset forfeiture fund, just to give you an example. And moving on.
I noticed in the some of the drug seizures that there was a market reduction this last year versus 2023. I'm assuming that, I guess you had some rather large busts in 23.
Yes.
And that's probably
that's contributed to, at that time we had some new officers or detectives, and they were just introduced to the DEA task force, and so they had a really good year. And then this year they've done some refocuses on other things and seized a lot more money. But I just walked in there today and looked at some of the pictures of the drug seizures, and I can sit here and look at it on paper, but if you just see it with them standing there in front of the drugs, it's still a substantial amount. I assure you of that.
Chief, does that mainly come from like the 85, like the exits, or is this stuff that we're getting, is this trafficking, or is this more stuff actually in the houses? Yeah.
Well, it originates all over the place, and the reason we put these detectives, these vice narcotics agents on these task forces, so everyone can collaborate together and work it. So it may start in Charlotte, but Since we're kind of between two major cities, Gastonia and Charlotte, a lot of times the drug dealers come here to do their drug sales because they meet in the middle. And so there's no real good answer to your question on every single one of these things. I will say that we've seized a substantial amount of drugs in Belmont that we got out of houses where we did search warrants, but the majority of them kind of bounces around where we take the person down at versus where the drugs actually come from. They all come from most part from the cartel, our big seizures.
Thank you.
Moving on to crimes against persons, we had a slight increase of 2 for assaults. And I'd like to point out the kidnapping. We didn't have 5 kidnappings in the sense of people getting taken from the street. Those were domestic, where people were held against their will. Like if you remove someone from one room and put them in another and hold them, it's a kidnapping. So I just want to make sure you know we didn't have kidnapping out there, kidnapper out here. We had a couple more sex offenses, and so that's crimes against property. Let's see. It's like fraud and embezzlement is down some. All fraud is down from 125 to 99. We had 5 robbery of businesses last year. We got 4 this year. We had 7 robbery of persons. So overall, though, the total for crimes against property went down from 767 to 683. Some of the training that the department has received, I won't go into every single bit of it, but I will say that we are above and beyond when it comes to training. We not just do our in-service training, we teach leadership training, crisis intervention, racial intelligence, public safety leadership institute, which I'm familiar with, verbal judo, de-escalation, and so forth and so on. If you have any questions about any of that training, please let me know, and I'll go into more detail about the specifics of it. We had, last year we had 8,162 hours. This year we had 9,060, and then the total overall of the trainings that you see there, the different units, increased from 10,370 to 10,641.5. Moving on to accomplishments. We added 6 general instructors within our department, bringing our total general instructor to 19 general instructors. We try to, instead of spending a lot of money going out for trainings, we try to make it to where we can teach as much as we can in-house. And so we have some very talented individuals who teach a lot of different topics, including myself. We have 1 officer graduate from PSLI, Public Safety Leadership Institute. So far we've have a total of 20, and we're not going to stop that, but right now we're currently a little bit lacking in manpower, so we've kind of slowed down just recently on sending people as much as we had for coverages and stuff. The 2024 department accomplishments: we maintain our compliance with CALEA law enforcement accreditation. We just were reaccredited. I traveled to Jacksonville, Florida to receive the reaccreditation, and we spoke about last month with Tyler Graham, and he did his presentation. We've completed our annual file review and on-site assessment and everything that had to do with that. So that's a great accomplishment, and the one thing I'll tell you about our department versus a lot of other departments is we have complete buy-in by all the people at the police department. We assign all of the tasks of putting in the different, entering in all the tasks into the computer by everyone, and just 1 or 2 people doing it. So that way there's a lot more buy-in from everyone, and they understand it, they can explain it. We worked over or held over 40 city sponsors of events. And the TJ Green, our community sergeant, is always looking for new events and new ways to connect with the public and connect with the community. We have a great community that's very supportive. We held our department's 3rd Faith in Blue event with activities and events that span over 4 days. This is the 3rd one we've done. It's only grown, and it's something that we're very proud of. We hope to expand this Faith in Blue into a county-wide initiative. That's my vision. So far, we're working on it. We're getting there. 2024 departmental awards include a meritorious service awards, exceptional duty awards, leadership awards, and multiple commendations. Every month we have Officer of the Month. We do the year-end awards at our Christmas party, but we do have an Officer of the Month every month, and that's voted on by the peers. So it just depends on, we don't vote on that as far as administration. So the peers vote on that. We have some very exceptional officers. We implemented Vision Zero with your help, and participated in the Vision Zero Task Force, participated in the the TAC committee, which some of you are on as well. Hosted the Citizen Police Academy in conjunction with the BC AAA, and updated the Blue Team IA software. Let me explain the Blue Team IA software. What that does is it tracks complaints and other internal tracking mechanisms to ensure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, such as use of force, show of force, early intervention of officers that get multiple complaints or involved in more than so many. We have a set standard where there's like a max cap here, and then we need to start kind of looking into possibly early intervention if we've not had to do that, but that's some mechanisms that's set on there so that we're stay on top of things. That way we can provide the community with the best service possible. And calls initiated by officers. The one that I'd like to bring your attention to is the 911 hang-ups. For some reason, between 2023 and 2024, we had the same number of kids call 911. I don't know how that's possible. I looked at that today, and I had to joke. But I'm not going to go into every one of these. It's a really long list. But if there's any of these that you'd like to touch base with me on and talk about or look at, just let me know.
Hey, Chief.
Yes, sir.
I do have one. I always forget, with the special checks, the all types, what does that encompass again?
What the special checks are is, like, say if you go out of town, there's two different things here. So you go out of town and you want to call us and say, hey, I'm going out of town and I have 2 blue cars in the driveway, and will you check on our property? We'll do that. But the officers is self-initiated by the officers, and when we have those come in, we log it into the system. But we also have relevant places where we have like break-ins. The Walmart, different places where we have more crime or more things that we need to check on. So throughout the night, we check on like Main Street, North Belmont, all of these different places. So that's the majority of our calls are self-initiated when it comes to that. But what that does is it helps us when, say, there's something on Main Street or something like Saki gets broken into, and we've done special checks. We have a time frame in there to where we know this was checked at this certain time to here. So when we're looking at video footage of things that may take place, we can go back and we know this was checked between here and here, so it narrows down those time frames. So, but it also, logs that the officers are out here riding around, not sitting in a parking lot somewhere, just hanging out, doing nothing. So, you can see that there's been a lot of special checks done. So
I know they do those too, at the town center with the Harris Teeter, when we have those issues with kids, especially before school, after school, that you guys have been really
And
good about.
that's another good example of how we try to combat stuff like that, and also logs. If someone calls in and says we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, we can say, well, we have this log right here. And that has been useful in a lot of different ways, even with some of the break-ins at some of the hotels along the 85 corridor, where we were, I won't go into it, but I'll just say it helped us to have these when we went into that, to prove that we were doing what we're supposed to be doing. And the total overall for calls for service last year was 47,534, and this year we had 53,229. And what I'll say about that is you'll see that we had over 50,000 calls for service, and we had 5 use of force incidents this past year. And some of those were canine related, where people were apprehended by the canine dog. And we had 1 citizen's complaint, and I'll tell you, we already had one of those this year, but it's good. Well, the number of traffic stops for our canine unit, if you have any questions about that, I will say we had overall 23 apprehensions. And this 23 apprehensions, I'll tell you, is we had some dogs that we had to retire out and stuff, and so this is the apprehensions with, let's say, a narrowed down canine unit at this point. We have a couple in training right now out of town that have we have a new dog that when they get back, we'll bring maybe the canine handler and explain it to him. And
The dog was aptly named as well.
Kilo. So the drugs, you can see just like you see the vice narcotics unit for what they seized. And it's not an overall projection or picture of the whole police department. When I was talking about vice narcotics seizing drugs, and then I'm talking about the canine unit seizing drugs, you still have the patrol officers which seize drugs as well. They had drug seizures as well. So in combination, it's a lot. But here's some of the drugs that were seized from just alone from the canine unit. If you don't have any questions, I'll move on to code enforcement statistics. There was a total of citizen complaints and requests received, an increase from 650 from last year to 731. citizen complaints or requests received. And then the total number of cases that remain open, last year were 31, and this year it's 27. So we closed a couple of more cases out. And then total citations or notices was 642 last year and 463. So that could be from people actually catching on to what we had initiatives were last year, and maybe there's a decrease in offenders, so to speak. I'd say that Lindsay stays on top of that stuff really well. And in minimum housing cases, there's only one open this year, and last year there was 13. So she's been hard work bringing some closure to some of those cases. And I'm not going to discuss golf course jokes here. There's 31 this year. So, look, I'm trying to not jinx myself on golf course. We have a lot more before, but if y'all don't have any more questions, that's all I have.
No questions, but since we're kind of taking inventory on the year last year, I just wanted to commend you guys. I mean, reading through these accomplishments for last year, this is outstanding.
And thank you very much.
I would just add that we've got a very active, vibrant town, a lot of events, over 40 events that you guys were asked to work, and we just really appreciate the job you guys did. It's outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, that leads us to item C3, Environmental Sustainability Board Compost Program Presentation. To introduce this topic is our Public Works Director, Jonathan Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. In the fall of 2023, the city, along with the Environmental Sustainability Board, applied for a food waste reduction grant from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. We were awarded that grant, which began February 1st, 2024, with an end date of January 31st, 2025. And this also included a 6-month compost collection pilot study during that time frame. At this time, I will turn it over to Maria Portone, a member of the Environmental Sustainability Board, to go through the results of this pilot study. Thank you.
Several of you were here when we did the original presentation. Several were not. I'm not going to read every word of this thing to you. When we did that presentation before, for the people who were not here, the reason that we decided to start a composting program was because food waste is about 24% of everything that goes to the landfill. It's the largest single category of material. Once it's there, it decomposes anaerobically and releases methane, which is a harmful environmental gas. So composting seems like a win-win. You reduce what's going to the landfill, and you keep bad things from going into the air. We did receive a 6-month compost grant from the Department of Environmental Quality, and we found 5 collection sites spread out over the city of Belmont to make it convenient for residents to participate. We enrolled over 200 residents, and the 11,000 figure was an estimate based on 5 months worth of data. I just looked this morning, and we are well over to 12,000 now, 12,000 pounds in 6 months with 200 households. The graphs on this page, if you care to know which sites did how much, that's where you find that information. It's broken down either by per subscriber per site, because some sites have more people, or just general pounds per site.
Just so I'm clear, on those stats, the 11 to 12,000 of food waste that was diverted from the landfill, that converts into approximately 10 bags of compost to the city, is that right?
No, that's
Okay.
just how much
Okay.
they would give us.
I see.
Deliver that amount. It is equivalent to a car not driving 12,000 miles, basically. Or my other sheets at the back, I think it's planting 20 seedlings and growing them for 10 years. So, you know, it's not a huge amount, but it's a step in the right direction, basically. We've started kind of small to dip our toe in the water. As part of, any other questions on this slide? As part of the grant, we committed to do a stakeholder survey. So we sent out in surveys to all of the participants, some of whom are here tonight, to support the program, in addition to the man who spoke at the beginning. So if you have any questions on their experience with it, you've got somebody to ask. We got about a 24% response rate, which is fairly typical for surveys, and 98% of the respondents rated it 4 or 5 out of 5. And 98% of the respondents would continue if the program is unchanged. And we'd lose some if we imposed a fee. You know, that's just human nature. But a significant number said they would continue, even if there were a small fee involved. There's some quotes on here that you can read. I think all of the comments that I got were positive. I can't recall a single one. The one response that wasn't terrifically glowing was somebody who really hadn't used the program at all because they had been traveling. So.
Well, there's always something.
You can't, you know, there's always someone. So, grant funding actually expired January 31st of this year. I tried in November, I asked for December and January to get on your schedule, but this was the best that they could do for us. So, you have to decide whether or not you want to continue this program or sunset the program. And if we have to sunset, we need to let the participants know as soon as possible so that we stop having things deposited in those bins. I think at this point, we're on the hook for at least 1 week of Crown collection because you're not just going to leave that stuff in the cans. How much would it cost to extend? That's the next page. When I made the original presentation, Crown Town told us that it would be about $1,800 a month. But now that they have experience with us, they've reduced that figure to $1,357 a month for the basically 4 or 5 collections a month that they need to do because they do it weekly. There are a number of questions there. If you do decide to extend, we need to see how this will play into the next solid waste contract, or we need to look into there is another provider that we could look at to see if that is better or worse than continuing with Crown Town. And we could look at, should it be a fee program? If so, how would we administer that? So there are many questions. But first thing to do is decide. Based on the results that we received, results achieved, low-cost expenditure, and enthusiastic response from pilot participants, the ESB recommends continuation of the program with Crown Town through the end of the city's fiscal year. During that 5-month extension period, the ESB further recommends that the city define a long-term strategy to grow and sustain the program in perpetuity, as well as establish a contract with a multi-year service provider. I noticed in the packet that staff recommended not to continue, but their only objection was that it wasn't in the budget. when I made the original presentation back in October of 2023, that question was asked, how much would it cost to extend to the end of the year? I don't know if you can even put a line item in a budget for a program that's not approved. So if we should have done that, I beg your forgiveness, and I ask for a budget amendment to make this possible. I think it's the future. It's, as recycling was once non-existent, I think that composting is the way forward, a way forward to improve solid waste collection, both reducing what goes into the landfill and improving our air quality. Many communities around us, Davidson has a program that they have approved to continue. I saw that Mecklenburg County now has 2 sites open. I don't think they'll be quite as successful as we have been with our 5 sites because it won't be as convenient for people. But I think other municipalities in Mecklenburg County at least are looking at getting grants the way that we have to help with those startup costs of purchasing the bin and getting things set up. So that's our recommendation, and I hope that you will consider making a budget amendment so that we can continue this program.
Thank you. Questions for Maria or discussion?
I've got a question. How did you come up with the 11,600 pounds of?
Let's see if she has a picture. In the appendix, I think there's a picture of the dashboard that, yeah, let me find it. So there's information on why should we compost, why should the city provide service, all the responsibilities and the financial. Here's the dashboard. Crown Town provides a dashboard.
How did they come up with that number?
They weigh the stuff
Okay,
when they pick it up.
okay.
So that's how they could tell us which sites are more heavily used than others.
Any other questions?
The $6,785 for the rest of the fiscal year, is that based on the number of participants, or is that a set cost?
That's the set cost for Crown Town to service the number of cans that we have at the number of sites we have. There's probably some room for additional people. I don't think the cans are maxed out at this point.
They're just like,
Recycle bins.
yeah, regular, they're right next to the trash and recycling at Davis Park, for instance. But they have a lock, and they give the program participants the combination so that way you don't have random people tossing in things that shouldn't be in there. If that's,
Yeah.
so I have a few questions. So we've actually, in terms of the reporting, we got an extension of 6 months to do the reporting part of the grant.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
I believe that's true, Jonathan.
Is that to basically satisfy the obligations for what we've already received?
Yes, I think that's to satisfy our obligations.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So, from my perspective, I think it's fine, and I'm not opposed to extending for the remaining 5 years of this budget. 5 years. Sorry.
I'll be
Thank
happy
you.
with 5 years.
Yeah, really. 5 months of the fiscal year. My question is more, well, what then? We know what the costs are for the remaining 5 months, but what would we be potentially obligating ourselves for if we were going to do this permanently or long term? Would it be similar to if let's say we just keep the 5 locations that we have now, $13.85 a month, so maybe a little bit more than double, so like 15,000 maybe?
I believe, that Crown Town will continue with roughly the same amount per month. If the things that could change it, if council wants us to, we can aggressively pursue getting more people involved, which would increase the tonnage, which might increase the number of cans, but it would be incremental. You know, you'd have to add more cans at different sites, and then, you know, the amount to Crown Town might change. But if we keep things just the way they are, I think it would stay fairly stable, assuming the gas prices don't go through the roof.
Yes, Miles?
My recommendation, if we extend it for the next 5 months, is to have staff, make sure that this is the best cost that there is out there. Make sure that there's no other vendors that can do, this work. You know, Crown Town is one vendor.
There's one other, there's Earth Farms Organics. They do mostly businesses. They don't have, the thing they don't have that would be an additional startup cost, so it would have to be weighed. Crown Town maintains the list. They have the sign-up form for us. So they've done they have some IT resources that they provide to us
Correct.
that we'd have to replace.
Yeah, I think on staff, we'd look at it and make sure that was, the direction we'd like to go. If it's Crown Town or another vendor that's out there, make sure we get the best, the lowest rate for our citizens.
Coincidentally, that would be my recommendation as well. Yeah.
Everyone's.
Yes, but no, but more to the point, I do think, you know, again, I have no issue extending it, and I think considering how it played out in terms of when the meetings aligned, in terms of sunsetting it after it's already technically expired, I'd rather, you know, figure it out so that it works more smoothly whichever way we want to go. But I would want to use the interim 5 months to figure out, like, what's it going to look like if we were to extend it permanently, and if we decide that that's not feasible, then we're, you know, to sunset it in a more, you know, gradual, smooth way with more notice than like, oh, you know, sorry, that's it. So, you know, I would want to put this on the agenda again in either May or June, see what we come up with in the intervening time, and then, you know, that would coincide with the budget process too. I mean, it sounds like it's not going to break the bank, but, you know, before we obligate ourselves perpetually, I think that's something that we all are concerned about. How would you say the program as it transpired over the past 6 months, how did that align with your expectations going in? Would you say in terms of like the participation, in terms of the pounds of collected, pounds per household, et cetera, et cetera?
The only thing, I was a little disappointed in the number of participants, I'll be honest. We were under a bit of a constraint with the advertising. We ran up against the 10-year planning process that kind of sucked all the advertising space out of, oxygen out of the room. I had hoped to do a water bill insert, but we were not permitted to do that. So we were limited to social media and basically me walking through Belmont, putting up posters, and our committee attending the local events like Garibaldi Fest. So that was all the advertising that we were able to do. But of the 200 that we had, they've been wonderful. There have been no complaints from the sites. You know, they are very appreciative of the program and the opportunity to do this. Even my husband, who I thought would never be interested.
To that question, if it were extended, is there any intention to go with another round of invitations or expand the number of sites?
That is entirely up to you. I don't know.
I guess if you expand the number of sites, that increases the cost,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we wouldn't need, I don't think we'd need to expand the number of sites. We've
Right.
got one in North
To try to get more
Belmont,
participants.
but we could get more participants, and that could increase the number of cans, and I'd have to ask Crown Town how that would affect.
Right now, there's no fee for the participants?
Correct.
Correct.
Just like trash collection and recycling, there's a solid waste fee.
And it was a little over $20,000 for the first 7 months, but only $6,500 roughly.
That included all the cans.
You have to get the bins and the
I see.
cans. So real quick, I didn't have too many questions because I sit as the delegate for this board, and I do know that this team has done quite a lot in regards to trying to get this over the finish finish line, along with other things that they do in regards to energy, in regards to trying to clean our streams, and the tree save, actually, in regards to our text amendments and our codes. But real quick, we said that, potentially the cans could potentially hold more, correct? They're probably not maxed out right
I
now.
don't think they are, based on the statistics I've seen.
Yeah, so I think, there's probably an opportunity to probably add additional people there. But curious as to it with the grant itself helped us fund this to get the cans, or we would have had to buy that, or buy all that stuff up front. I'm curious if there's a grant to continue the program, right? If there's any type of funding out there that potentially aids municipalities that want to kind of keep this program going, that would be kind of curious.
There was one grant that covered servicing, which is the stage that we're in right now. And I didn't see it come up again last year.
Gotcha.
This particular grant, you can apply a second time. I think Davidson did that, got a second grant, but it was for expansion. They wanted to go from this number of sites to a larger number of sites.
Gotcha. And then kind of the only kind of final comment on this, to Jim's point, I agree, with whatever the 5 or 6 months that we have with the extension of the program, I would be interested in extending it and then seeing where we come up from. But I would be curious if the board would be interested in giving a few proposals, right? So one, maybe we look at something if we make this a charged program, right, to help cost share the benefits going forward. Or the other option is you keep it as it is and then maybe expand it, apply for another grant, keep expanding it. I think it'd be interesting to see both of those scenarios so that council can kind of pick and choose, or ultimately you sunset it. I mean, if that's the other side. But I don't know if that's something the board would be interested in, but
We'd like to continue the program under whatever means makes sense.
okay.
Where does Crown Town take the waste?
They currently have an organic farm up in Concord that they use. That's where they do the composting.
Any other questions? Does anyone have an issue with extending it for the 5 months? But, we'd like to see some, activity done. Don't, take advantage of the time to see, what,
Are we expecting more participants in the 5 months? Or are we expecting more of the
There
same that we've gotten right here?
There could be, it's still up on the city website. The sign-up form is up there, but unless we made some sort of effort, I wouldn't anticipate getting a lot more. But you tell me, we can try for another round of advertising and see.
I think we do. I think we put it in the water bill, do another round of advertising, because we need to start gauging how big this could potentially be for the community. So if it's a wider spread.
Yeah, because that's more.
That helps us.
It might be a very enthusiastic but small group. Is that enough to justify, the fund? Because the cost of the city-wide for us versus.
That's why I feel like it can only be fee-based. You don't want people paying for
Something.
Then again, everyone pays for recycling, whether they choose to use it or not.
Miles, what are the rules about what can and can't go in the water bill and service? Are there any prohibitions about, it has to be a city sanctioned event or?
Yeah, it has to be a city sanctioned event, but this could be considered, something that we put in there. So,
Okay.
It's just the timing of it, it's the main thing that we need to get it in.
Yeah,
There's costs associated with putting things in the right bill as well.
Right.
If we didn't get it in soon, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to do it, because 5 months.
All right. Any other questions?
Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll entertain a motion to extend the program for 5 months with a subsequent budget amendment to cover the cost in the amount of $6,785.
I'll make that motion for the budget amendment and the extension of the 5 months.
Motion made by Alex, second by Jason. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, passes 3-1. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting this together.
All right, that brings us to item C4, fluoride in drinking water. I believe that's also our Public Works Director, Jonathan Wilson, to present on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So tonight we prepared a presentation on fluoride in drinking water. It is an added chemical to the treated water that the city of Belmont puts in or sends out to the public for consumption. Fluoride. So fluoride is a mineral that is naturally found in the water, soil, and certain foods. There are many different types of fluoride, topical, systemic, and compounded with other elements. The addition of fluoride in drinking water began in some parts of the United States in as early as 1945. Over the next 2 decades, thousands of communities across the country began adding this to their water. The city of Belmont began adding it in 1971. So the type of fluoride that the city puts into the drinking water is HFS. I'm not going to try to pronounce the actual term there.
Go for it.
So it's converted, or it's produced by converting phosphoric rock into soluble fertilizer, and it releases 2 toxic fluoride gases, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. The hydrogen fluoride is then condensed and collected and scrubbed with water to create the HFS. It is also, HFS is the most common method for drinking water. So some of the safety concerns with fluoride and then the storage of it. It is less reactive and toxic than some other types of fluoride, but it still has hazardous substances with a sharp and irritating odor. You should avoid contact with the skin, eyes, and ensure adequate PPE, keeping it away from open flames. And it is stored in large bulk storage tanks at our treatment facility. And you can see a picture here of those. You see the 2 large round cylinders there. Those are tanks for water, and then there's a small group there off to the side, to be to the left of the screen, kind of center picture. And there's a close-up of it. Right now there are 3 bulk storage tanks in this containment area, with the fluoride being the furthest to the top of the picture. And then there's a side view of it. I believe you can see fluoride is on the side of that tank there. It'd be the one on the far right. And here's some other pictures of its corrosiveness, what it can do to certain substances. The picture on the left is glass. The picture on the right is concrete. It's eating away the concrete there. Here are pictures of the pumps for the fluoride. You can tell it's highly corrosive, which results in the need to replace these pumps every so often. So some of the budget implications for fluoride. The city spends roughly $9,000 a year on actual fluoride. Then the reagents and supplies for the testing of the fluoride in the water is $5,200 a year. The chemical transfer pumps, which was in the previous picture, those are $3,800 every time we have to replace a pump. We have to do that every 2 to 3 years due to the corrosiveness of the substance. And then the metering pumps also have to be replaced every 2 to 3 years, and those are approximately $1,000 each. The biggest concern for our staff at the treatment plant is we need another bulk storage tank per hour. Due to the constraints of the wastewater treatment plant site, we don't really have a great spot to put this extra bulk storage tank. If we were to remove fluoride from our treatment process, we could repurpose that site that the bulk storage tank is housed for fluoride fluoride for the additional alum tank. We've gotten estimates in the past. If we were to construct a new bulk storage tank, it would be approximately $100,000 to do so, if we are able to find the appropriate space on the site to house that location. Some other water systems in the state that do not add fluoride to their treatment process, Union County. This one was in the news locally. They removed fluoride from their treatment process last year. Franklin, North Carolina, in the western part of the state, and then also Sparta, the Virginia, North Carolina border. And then additionally, communities that are served by groundwater or community wells, none of those have fluoride added to their water. And then the process, should we decide to discontinue adding fluoride, we would need to notify the Department of Environmental Quality, Water Supply Section, and the Department of Public Health, Oral Health Section, copies of documentation by the unit of local government, being a resolution provided in the formal application to add fluoride has been rescinded or replaced, and then the local health board has been notified. And then at this time, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, John, I appreciate it. So, quick one on this, because wasn't it originally required by the state to have this or for us to use this to be treated for the water?
I'll defer to Jennifer Gibson, our manager at the water treatment plant. I don't know if it was ever required.
Okay. Because I remember when Joe used to, when I did the tour or whatever, when we were talking about like the quality of the water, and we had just won like best water in the state or something like that, I thought it was attributed to the fluoride.
Is that best or most expensive?
No, so the only reason that fluoride is added is to prevent cavities. So it's nothing to do with treating water, it's more treating people and keeping them getting cavities. It's strongly recommended because the CDC years ago, when they first started putting this in all the systems, we didn't have fluoride in toothpaste. We didn't have fluoride in mouthwashes. So that was like the main way that people were exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been studies that it's actually more effective topically than ingesting. So if you don't have to ingest it, if it's in your toothpaste and mouthwash, and then all the benefits that we would have at the plant, because you can see there's no room really to put. You have to have a containment area, which an engineer has to design in case that tank fails. It's got to be able to hold all the liquid in that bulk tank. So you've got engineer costs, designing that containment area, the construction costs, and then the tank itself. So it's quite expensive, takes up a good bit of room. And really the alum is the coagulant that is what makes everything you want to remove from the water clump together, and it can then settle out in the basins. And that's really the chemical that we need more of. The river is changing, the conditions aren't getting better. They're getting worse. So we are going to be using only more, and it's kind of dependent on weather. Like if we get storms and there's a lot of stuff churned up, we have big rain events, we use a lot more alum. So that makes a big difference. But there's times when we've had rain events that we're ordering alum twice a month. And you're really technically supposed to have more storage on site. That state recommended you should have, I think it's like 30 days worth, and there's no way we can get that much.
If we got rid of the fluoride tank, would we be able to have the?
Yes, we would want to use that containment area. I've asked a few questions. So the material of the bulk tank does matter. You could use the tank that's there for fluoride, but we would probably need to do what they call heat tracing, because certain chemicals freeze at at a higher temperature than water does. So we would have to look into, is it gonna be more expensive to get this tank where we can use it, or just buy a new tank? But the containment area, for sure, we'd use.
When was that quote? Was it a couple of years ago for $100,000 for a new tank?
Yes.
Was that just for the tank, or was that the containment area you referred to as well?
I think it was the containment area and the tank. Yeah, so this has been on the CIP list for a few years now. And actually, it was on there to get more caustic and alum storage. But really, because of the lack of space, caustic, the bulk caustic tank is the biggest one in the middle, and we don't use quite as much of that. So if we can just get more alum, you'd be, getting rid of that CIP item that's been on the list for a really long time. I think we could do with the amount of caustic that we have. And caustic is used mainly for pH control, and with fluoride being such a strong acid, it requires more use of caustic. Caustic's a base, and you have to bring that pH up to the right level. So if we cut out fluoride, we're probably going to be using less caustic anyway.
I was just curious, because you flashed with like 3 municipalities in North Carolina that aren't doing it, and then obviously if anyone's on well, they're not adding. I mean, what's like market intel? I mean, is this something Gastonia's talking about? Is this something that, or I guess Two Rivers, is this something that other municipalities are discussing, or is?
Yeah, 'cause I'm surprised there's not more.
Yeah, I would just agree.
Or were those just local examples?
Yeah, just trying to
Those were,
understand.
I guess you could say local examples, and just a quick search for those in North Carolina specifically.
So that was not meant to be exhaustive?
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay.
I think, and it's probably the citizens that are discussing it more. I mean, you've got people that feel really strongly about it on both sides of the fence. But what kind of made it take a front seat for us is
Logistical.
the whole thing with, having more alum storage.
And if we got rid of the fluoride, that would, you showed the slide that had, you gotta replace the meters every 2 to 3 years. If we get rid of the fluoride, we're not having to replace them every 2 to 3 years.
Right, we wouldn't even have that meter. I mean, we wouldn't have that pump, that transfer
It would
pump.
extend the life of our water infrastructure.
Yes, well, as far as the fluoride,
Impact, yeah.
Well, you provided some examples of other North Carolina municipalities, but there are many countries elsewhere in the world that do not put fluoride in their water, including many advanced democracies. Is that correct?
That
Such
is
as
correct.
Canada, Japan, Western European countries.
Yes.
So DEQ is obviously permitting municipalities to discontinue this fluoride treatment, but what are you hearing as far as like are there any studies out there from like, I don't know, the state health department or any others that's kind of trying to demonstrate any kind of marginal benefit of having fluoride in your water in addition to having it in your toothpaste and your mouthwash and those kind of things? Or, are you seeing any pushback from?
I haven't seen
the health
anything from the state, but the state inspector, I emailed him to ask, just because I was curious, what do you have to do? What are the steps to discontinue? And he was given some pushback. You've got a lot of people that still think it's like the best thing that was ever done. So, I mean, it depends on who you talk to. But as far as him, but he still, I responded to his email and this is the reasons I would consider it, and I told him about, our plant and us needing more storage. And he didn't give much pushback there. You could tell he wasn't happy about it, but
And who is this?
his name is Ray Whitner.
But what position is he?
He is the inspector that comes to our water plant.
From DEQ? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. If there's no questions, does anyone want to put a motion on the table?
I'm just gonna be honest, this one's kind of tough, right? Because, and I think this is tough for a lot of people, and it probably sounds like it's had a question mark on it for the past couple of years as to what we do with it. Now, some people are for it, some people are against it. There's studies out there that this can be, linked to various other diseases, right? And then there's links that this is actually preventative to certain diseases. So I don't know. I mean, is this enough? I think you guys did a great job, but is this enough information for us to go on to make this decision, right? I mean, if the inspector from DEQ is saying no, or, kind of pushing back a little bit, I'd be a little more curious to understand both sides to the situation. Now, I understand that we need the new tank. I mean, when do we need that by realistically, you think, the additional space?
Well, we've just been making it work.
Because I know it's been on there since
ordering it,
21 or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Ordering it alum as often as we need it. So, I mean, I wouldn't say like there's any real rush for it, but we've gotten in a few pinches.
Yeah.
And sometimes we end up just having to order it without having a PO number, because that process, like, it can be tricky with timing. If you get bad weather and you end up using a lot more for several days, sometimes we just have to end up going ahead and ordering it with just the requisition number, because we can't do without it. You can't treat water without it.
Is it possible for us to understand the condition of being able to convert it now before we make the decision on terminating or sunsetting the fluoride? Because again, let's say that we go ahead and say, well, we're not going to do fluoride, but we're saying we're doing that because we need the additional space. And I know it's highly corrosive on the plant, but we need the additional space. But let's say that we can't convert this tank. Then we've just discontinued the fluoride, and then we can't use the tank regardless. You get what I'm saying? I don't know if that's something that we can assess.
Well, I know you can convert it, I just don't know, the cost would have to be weighed, like the heat tracing I was talking about. It's just a matter of how much that would cost versus just buying a new tank.
Right.
But you all's recommendation, having, had these discussions with DEQ and what staff's recommendation was to discontinue the fluoride, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, I think they kind of leave it up to cities. I think some cities involve like public comment or, because some people may get upset about it. The only.
Well, you can say that about pretty much everything.
That's very true.
Really, the only drawback I can think of is underprivileged kids that may not have access to dental care, and maybe they, don't get the products at home they need. That would really be the only drawback. But, you mentioned the health conditions. Really, the only thing it helps with is cavities. There's nothing else.
By us getting the fluoride out, we're gonna use more of alum, right?
No, you won't have to use more alum.
There'll just be more
Right.
space to store it.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yes.
We can
That
have
way-
more on hand at
Yeah,
one
that's
time.
what.
Yeah, that way we're not ordering it every time we turn around when we have bad weather.
And that's what cleans the water, is that?
Right. It's a coagulant. So I'll have to send you my slideshow.
Yeah.
Go to the water plant, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you can come. Mhm.
Well,
This is a tough one, you're right.
And I'm not trying to,
No, that's,
debunk or whatever you, because
I think
I
thinking
appreciate
about
everything.
it longer is
Yeah.
perfectly acceptable. I mean, we kind of just threw this at you.
Because you're right, there are people on both sides of the fence, and, perhaps the benefit of having this in your water, have been replaced by other methods of, but again, there are, maybe those households that don't have access to a lot of that. So I think we've got to take a lot of that into consideration. I don't know if it's possible to get, just to have some sort of confirmation, whether it's from, a health-related agency or, a medical expert to say, is the only true benefit of having this in the water purely to prevent and, reduce the incidence of cavities? Or is there some other benefit that we're not? I mean, that's all I've ever heard of, really benefited, but I don't know, I feel like we need a little more information.
well, if that's the situation, is that, I mean, it sounds like there's some thoughts to continuing this discussion till
We
a
could.
later date?
Yeah, we could, ask maybe like the head of DEQ, either to come or appoint somebody to be here, maybe not the inspector. Start at the top and say, who's the person that, could speak appropriately to this, and then bring that information to you all, whether they speak here, or whether they provide that information to you.
Well, I think they've already kind of communicated their position, right? I mean, I'd like to hear from someone from the health field.
Department of Health and Human Services or somebody like that, yeah. Somebody that has a high ranking, medical background.
Yeah, and give a, their perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Well, I'm sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, if that's the direction, that's what we'll take, is like, bring the information back, see what else we can gather from like a medical perspective. You've got the asset kind of perspective from us, right? I think that's the main one.
And the environmental perspective from DEQ. I think the only thing we're missing is now the medical perspective.
Probably just around water and everything. Do they still do fluoride removal there?
I assume we never discussed it, but I assume Mount Holly does fluoride.
Oh, I guess not. He was there.
So is there, if it were to be, I guess if it were to be postponed, continued, to when would an appropriate time to continue it be?
How long would it take us to find the facts from a medical expert? Probably a month, I would say, maybe two. And this item's not gonna go off the CIP, it's always gonna be on the CIP, it's a priority project, we'll have made it to the list.
Can you also get a quote for that heat tracing you were talking about?
Yeah.
Just a ballpark.
I think I already have one for that. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I don't know how much a new tank would cost, so I would need to find that out so we could compare.
All right, so is there a motion?
To postpone?
Whatever motion.
You need a motion to postpone?
I think like March, April.
Or is that just direction?
Well, I think we were being asked to make a decision tonight, so if that's the case, wouldn't we need to continue it to another?
Don't put us on a deadline, I would say we want to get back in the next couple months, I don't know if March is the appropriate time, but I would say as soon as possible, we'll bring it back to you all. Plus, we'll probably go ahead and prepare the resolution. That's one thing we didn't do tonight that we can do, is have it prepared. You can either take the resolution at that time, or just say no, we just keep on the CIP.
So motion to continue this until staff comes back with the appropriate information requested.
All
I mean, does that work for you, Parks, just to keep it moving, or do we need to put a date?
I don't know if you need a motion,
Oh.
why don't you just instruct staff?
If that's the will, then
I will call my motion. So.
okay, all right, well then, we'll do that accordingly, although I will state that I would have been prepared to make a decision tonight to.
I was prepared to vote to get rid of fluoride.
Yep. All right. Then that's the,
We'll then make a motion,
well,
right?
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to get more information on the whole.
yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, item C5, public hearing for ZA 2014, that's correct, 04A Belmont Town Center Amendment, Fifth Third Bank. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing?
Motion to go into public hearing?
Motion made by Jason,
Second.
seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are now in public hearing, and to give the staff presentation is our planning director, Tiffany Farrow.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Again, this item is zoning map amendment 2014.04A, which means that it is an amendment of a previously approved zoning map amendment that was originally for the Belmont Town Center development. And specifically, the request for amendment is focused on the Fifth Third Bank proposed development project this evening. So the background on this, the applicant for this project is BDG Architects, and the representative that staff has been working with is Angela Mikowski. The property owner is South Point Associates Land, LLC. And the existing zoning on the entire Belmont Town Center property is Traditional Neighborhood Development Conditional District. The overall project, as initially approved, included 33.16 acres. The applicant is seeking to amend the initial zoning approval, focused on changes specifically on out parcel E, which contains 1.12 acres of the site in order to allow for a proposed bank to be placed on that specific out parcel. Because it amends a master plan that was previously approved, this is an amendment to that initial zoning map amendment for the entire parcel, but the changes are specifically limited to out parcel E, which is currently identified by parcel ID number 225540. So, looking at the overall site plan, you can see that the entire area, the 33.16 acres, is the area that's shaded in yellow and outlined on your screen. And tonight, what we are focusing on is the area that's then further highlighted in teal, which has been known as part of the project as out parcel E as identified in the initial rezoning plan. So you can see what they're proposing there, going back, what was originally approved for the site was up to 12,000 square foot of office and retail, which would have included up to 63 parking spaces, both on the site as well as on the adjacent street frontages on the property. So instead of up to 12,000 square foot of office and retail, the applicant is instead proposing to amend the original zoning map amendment to allow for up to a 2,000 square foot bank facility, but that does include a drive-through on the property. The drive-through component was the component that was specifically not included in the initial rezoning and would not have been otherwise allowable without this amendment on the subject part of the site. Zooming in a little bit further, we can see that out parcel E, this is the proposed new plan for the project, and my apologies, I should have updated this plan a little bit, and I'm sorry for not switching this out, so bear with me, but we'll go through how it's evolved between planning board and city council as a part of this. So you can see overall that this is the original footprint that they're proposing for the bank itself, which is set back further than what the original for the office retail component would be. Both set back further from the South Point Road frontage as well as the Stowe property frontage. The overall site plan also includes less impervious area that was previously planned. It includes less parking spaces, a reduction from 56 on site to 13 now proposed. Again, the building footprint is smaller, a reduction of approximately 10,000 square feet. The drive-through is proposed on site, which is why the amendment is coming before you all this evening. And then they are also proposing to add some additional landscaping as a type A buffer, which is required for drive-throughs to be screened for visibility on Stowe Road. So at the time that this project originally went to planning board, staff was working with the developer on some sidewalk alternatives. You can see that this was one option, which proposed a switchback ramp to provide pedestrian direct access to South Point Road. Instead, what planning board is supporting and what the developer has since amended the plans that have been included in your packet to include is the extension of sidewalk to loop around the entirety of the development site going north so that there's full pedestrian access around the subject bank development. This is preferred because of the topography of the site to avoid that switchback while still allowing for continuous pedestrian connectivity along the property.
Question, before you move on.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I was looking at this and I've been confused. What's that?
Great, yep, that's a dumpster.
Oh, that's a dumpster, okay.
Right. But great question. I know sometimes on these visually representative ones that are colored, there are less labels and it can be hard to tell.
Yes.
So one of the other big things that has changed from the out parcel, in addition to the reduction of the footprint, is you can also tell that there's only one driveway access now. The original site plan actually had two. So what this does is creates an even further distance between the entrance to the parking and the actual connection to South Point Road, which improves safety for the area with less points of conflict overall. Okay, so looking at transportation, because it's on South Point Road, so I wanted to go over that. This project overall, Belmont Town Center development, did have a TIA completed back when it was originally approved. That TIA initially was done in July 2014, but was updated in 2015 with the development of the Chick-fil-A. So the one that is the most latest for the property is the 2015 one. This, to note, was completed prior to Belmont having our own traffic impact analysis policy, but was completed and reviewed by NCDOT per their policies. The proposed use of the site as a bank would result in less vehicular trips than what was originally approved. So because it's a 2,000 square foot bank facility, it generates less trips than the 12,000 square foot of office and or retail would be anticipated to do. And therefore, it does not trigger a new study, because by right today, someone could develop this out parcel with up to 12,000 square foot of office and retail with no additional analysis. So because the use is less intense, it would not trigger additional study or a new study to be completed. Furthermore, staff did want to verify, though, that the mitigation that was identified in the original TIA was successfully installed on the site, especially in the proximity to this out parcel, to make sure. And we did have our transportation planner go out, field verify that not only were all of the mitigations that were required for the Belmont Town Center property installed, but in some cases they were enhanced from what was previously recommended. So those are already in place. The developer has additionally agreed to provide some additional right-of-way at the corner of Stowe and South Point Road that would allow for the sidewalk that's already in place today to be fully within Belmont's right-of-way. So that's that area that you can see highlighted there. It just rounds that out. Right now, the sidewalk is partially actually on this out parcel site. So one thing to keep in mind is with any amendment that comes before us, it is our responsibility to make sure that the plan that's being proposed is still consistent with our long-range plans. So since the original plan approval in 2014, the city has updated a lot of our long-term plans, but more specifically to the relevance for this project. Staff looked at our 2018 comprehensive land use plan, our 2023 pedestrian plan, as well as our 2024 Vision Zero plan. Again, amendments that, even though there was a project that was previously approved, amendments are required to evaluate consistency, and that we make those consistency findings that we make with every other zoning map amendment that comes before you all. So we wanted to make sure we included that analysis here. While future improvements were identified at Stowe and South Point Road in some of our newly adopted plans, specifically the 2024 Vision Zero plan is one example of this. No additional right-of-way is anticipated to be needed on the subject out parcel, so therefore what the developer is proposing in terms of additional right-of-way is completely voluntary and not related to the plans themselves. Furthermore, for council's benefit, the identified transportation improvements at the Stowe and South Point Road intersection that were in the 2024 Vision Zero plan and some of our other plans, they have already now been committed to being completed as part of the mitigation from another previously approved development, and that is the Lakeview Farms development. So with the memo that Gannett Fleming had provided with the Lakeview Farms development, their proposed solution would not require any additional right-of-way needs on the subject out parcel. Moving on to architecture, you can see 4 renderings on your screen with some arrows pointing to the angles of each of those different perspective drawings. Material-wise, what you're seeing is representative imagery of what is anticipated for development of the proposed bank site, if approved. You can see that the facades include a combination of brick, glass storefront, as well as EIFS or stucco product there, and have some multiple frontage and signage options because of their multiple street visibility and frontage as well. I will not read this to you, it's included in your packet, but what we did, because this is an amendment of a previously approved rezoning, is provided red lines of the updates that would be needed to amend the existing conditions of approval that currently are required for this entire Belmont Town Center site, to allow for the development of out parcel E for a proposed bank subject to your approval this evening. So those conditions are outlined both on the screen as well as in your agenda packet for your review. Both staff and planning board looked again at consistency with our comprehensive land use plan. This identified Belmont Town Center project is located within the Comprehensive Land Use Plan's Village Center, which is envisioned to provide a concentrated area that would allow for civic, office, and shopping services. So both staff and planning board agreed that that fit in line with what was envisioned for the site. It's still providing the ability for an office for the bank as well as some supportive services for retail on the site. It's just doing so with a different footprint and the addition of a drive-through facility. Also, it is the opinion of staff and planning board that the proposed project is most consistent with goal number 1 of land use, as it encourages a healthy tax base and promotes shopping and additional services adjacent to a variety of housing choices. And goal number 2 of the economy, as it helps to foster a vibrant economy with a diversified tax base by providing employment and commerce opportunities. This item was presented to planning board at their January meeting with a motion to recommend 5-1 as presented. And planning board also made the 2 required findings, 5-1, that the zoning map amendment was a reasonable request and in the public's interest, and that the zoning map amendment was consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan as previously outlined in land use and economy. We are now asking that City Council receive our report, any public comments, and ultimately make a decision on this proposed rezoning project following discussion. And then I know we have another item for the ordinance, so we can talk about the motions at that time. So that is all staff's report right now. If you have any questions for staff, and the applicant is here as well.
All right, questions for Tiffany, keeping in mind that we do have one individual signed up for public comment who I believe is the applicant. So any applicant-specific questions can be directed to that individual.
Question to Tiffany. Can you go back a slide? What was the reason behind the one person not voting in favor or voting against?
Sure, thank you for that question. We did have one dissenting vote on the planning board. The individual at that time was basing his decision off of the originally proposed site plan, which I'll go back to that here, and had concerns that without extending the sidewalk fully around the site, that the proposed plan was not consistent with the adopted plans, as it did not fully address the pedestrian needs of the plans that had been adopted since its original approval. And so it's my understanding that that dissenting member would have been more supportive if the plan that was presented to planning board included the sidewalk running all the way around the site as currently amended.
Gotcha.
But
Go ahead.
but the conditions still read that they can do either or. That's what I'm a bit, and I was at the planning board meeting for this rather perplexing discussion, I think that dissenting member was concerned that because it said either or, when it came time to do it, they could still develop it
With the switchback?
with that.
Sure, so we would be happy to consider any modifications to the conditions as necessary in order to strengthen and or carry out council's vision on this amendment.
Now, I will ask that question to the applicant.
Sure.
My understanding was that they were fine with this, which is why the whole discussion at the planning board level was so perplexing, but I'll let them speak to it.
Yes, and again, in your packet, you will find an updated site plan that was voluntarily provided by the applicant to amend the site plan that would go into the approved documentation to show the sidewalk running north-south.
Yeah, sorry, Tiffany, just a few more questions and kind of piggybacking off of what Jim's saying. So with the switchback there, and you said it, but I just want to be 100%. With the improvements that we're going to get through Lakeview Farms, and let's say they build that switchback there, will that cause any issues in regards to any of the road widening with the sidewalk or anything like that?
It is not anticipated to, so any plans that we've seen so far for roadway improvements with Lakeview Farms do not have any anticipated right-of-way needs on this out parcel.
Well, anticipated is quite different than confirmed. I find it hard to believe that our traffic engineer, before any set plans are presented, can say with confidence that there's no additional right-of-way needed. That's going to be a pretty impactful improvement along that, and to me, that is the most congested block of that entire widening project.
Sure, so I do want to clarify, the traffic engineer has not said that. What we are going off of is the preliminary design and roadway has been prepared by Gannett Fleming, who is not the city's traffic engineer. And until further engineering plans are complete, no one will know without a shadow of a doubt the exact amount of right-of-way, if any, that's needed for any roadway project. But that preliminary design does not give any indication that it would be needed on this side of the street.
I don't know if there's something that we can double check on that, because the problem with this area, and I've talked about this in the past, I think all of us have, is everything's too close to the road, right? I mean, we're kind of set ourselves up for failure in a lot of instances with a lot of those proposals down there and those constructions to try to widen this road, and we have a proposal from Lakeview Farms to do this. So I don't know if there's any other additional clarity we can get to ensure that this doesn't cause an issue to that, because I don't want to add another building down there until we know for certain that it's not going to cause an
Well,
issue with the
Sure.
road improvement.
What's the setback of the building, the actual building though?
Yeah.
From the Stonewall Road.
Right, it's more than, the engineer is is here tonight, so I will let him speak to specific measurements, but it is significantly more than what they'd be allowable to build by right. So if we go back, I'm gonna see, if you go back there, in the corner, I apologize for not having a zoomed up view. You can see that the original plans allow for up to a 12,000 square foot building, what looks to be maybe at most 10 feet away. And I'll put a sign up here. Yeah, so the minimum building setback that's allowable by right in the front is 10 feet. So, while that is still the minimum, you can see that what's being proposed is probably close to 30 or 40 feet, but I'll let the engineer speak directly on what that front setback measurement is as proposed.
Is that an accurate reflection of Chick-fil-A setback from the road?
Keep in mind that was the original approval.
Right.
So now Chick-fil-A is shifted a little bit more. It doesn't have that parking there where you're seeing C, because there's now a drive aisle for ordering.
Two-lane, yeah.
So it is likely shifted a little bit closer, as well as the fact that what's really the closest in proximity for the Chick-fil-A is that drive-through lane.
Yeah, I'm just trying to visualize.
Absolutely.
I mean, do we have the ability to, I don't know how much relevance this has for the applicant tonight, and maybe this is just a bridge that we have to cross whenever we get the final design plans for the improvements, but
Right.
do we have the ability to reserve any more right-of-way for that potential, or for that widening?
Any questions like that, I would direct to the applicant. Any conditional zoning, all conditions that are agreed upon must be agreed to by the applicant. So certainly would be something that could be a possibility through a conditional zoning. However, it would be up to them to agree to sign that added condition. Because the alternative would be that they could build what was previously approved much closer than what's proposed.
Right.
Any other questions for Tiffany?
Maybe just for staff in general, I mean, again, and we brought this up at the MPO, I don't know if we could talk to our NCDOT partners about the light there at that intersection at Raider Run. We've got to get this figured out. If we're going to continue adding additional construction to this, that light has got to get the timing correct. So I don't know what we can do to try to escalate that.
That's part of the overall design with the improvements, is that syncing of lights, plus the additional signal at Stowe.
Well, I'm
You're saying
talking about
for
doing
interim?
it today. I mean,
Yeah, right.
we can't keep waiting. They've had it done before, and then it gets out of sync, but we've got to figure out the syncing there, because we bring it up, and nothing changes, or it reverts back to its situation there.
So you're saying get the Red Raider Run intersection and timing figured out. One thing that we would be happy to do as staff, and then continue to advocate for that, would be to make the NCDOT staff aware, if you decide to approve this proposed project tonight, that it will be another development at this intersection. So hopefully we would ask that they would increase the priority of making those kinds of decisions.
Thank you. That would be.
We can do that through our transportation committee. too.
I brought it up at NPO too, Mark Stafford was there, so I don't know how we can keep escalating it, so.
We do our best to try to keep external agencies in the loop, but it's always a great reminder to follow up and let them know anytime we approve any new development projects.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany.
Any other questions for Tiffany? Thank you.
You're welcome.
We might have more later, but for now.
That's all right, I'll take a break for now.
So there's one individual signed up for public comment, who I'm pretty sure is the applicant, Larry Rayleigh.
project since 2013. We are the owners and have kept it. But I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem, the ability to talk to you all and the staff and working with the staff and also the council. I would like to say that Tiffany and her group have put hours in this project for us. We think that it's really a good project, one that could happen. When you start thinking about, and I'm going off script now, just because of what I've heard.
Can I just, we just have some decorum in the audience, please? We're trying to listen to the presentation. I'm sorry, that was,
That's okay.
it wasn't directed to you, that was
I
quick.
got you. So, in looking at this, we were pretty far down the road at one point back, and building a 12,000 square foot building there, which we have the right to do under the current site plan and this conditional development process, as we did with the property up on the corner with the Anytime Fitness and the other shop. And in doing so, we would have had created an enormous amount of additional traffic around there because we had the restaurants, other small shops. And this one is just, I think it just came from heaven. It really is a great product for all of us to have a bank here that has got minimum amount of traffic and has the ability, and we've been able to, with them, put together a site plan that works really well with one ingress and egress, and none of them on South Point or Stowe Road. And we think that's two things that mean a lot to all of us. And as it relates to the widening of the road and the condemnation or whatever you want, however you want to talk about the property that the DOT would be involved with, we have never to this point talked to DOT. That no one has contacted us, no one's talked to us, and we were kind of 4 weeks ago when this all started hitting. We were surprised to see that so much work had been done talking about our property, and nobody ever talked to us about our property. But that's another issue. But we think that this property, if you look at how the bank sits up, as it relates to the dentist, as it relates to the Chick-fil-A drive-through, and as it relates to those shops that we have there, that this is, the flow is good and the flow works. And working with Tiffany and her group to come up with a plan that accommodates all the requirements that we have from the conditional zoning, we think that this is a very good plan and one that works and goes through all the different ramifications of the conditional development process.
The applicant is generally given longer than 3 minutes to present and answer questions, so you may continue.
I was pretty close to there. But anyway, I think if I would, we have our architect and the engineer are here, and they can talk some about the sidewalk and about that particular aspect of it. And maybe at this point, if I can, now they're not on the agenda, but if I can allow them to talk about it.
Yes, that's fine. I would imagine at a minimum there would be some questions about that, but they would probably be in the better position to answer, so.
Brett Neville, Infinity Engineering Group, 1208 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602. All right, I guess one question that came up was, what are the true setbacks? So they're actually on the site plan, if you would bring it up. Did somebody bring up the site plan?
Well,
I don't have the full instruction set.
Okay, well, they're approximately 35 feet in both roadways, so let's see, here we go. Okay, so the building setback on South Point Road 34.4 and Stowe Road 35.7, which is over triple what's required by land development code at this zone. We have an intensity of 50% impervious. We have a very small building, low intensity. We are less intense for transportation. This building's only operational from 9 to 5, sometimes 9 to 6. So we feel like we're kind of being held hostage here. We have potential right-of-way taking that may or may never happen. there's no plans designed. And we're at a point where we have full engineering, full architecture, we're prepared to submit tomorrow. We had hoped to have this thing done in construction, and it was on the calendar for 2025 build. So, trying to figure out how we can get there.
Well, and we need to be able to ask some questions and do some due diligence to be comfortable moving forward. So I don't think anyone's intending to hold you hostage. We're just asking some questions as representatives of the public. Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple, but just real quick, just so I understand, and I don't know if anyone up there will be able to answer, how many employees are you anticipating in this?
5 to 6 on peak.
5 to 6 in this, and then you're gonna have 13 spaces, I believe it is?
We're requesting 7 for, customers, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, I'm good right there, but Jim, if you wanna go, or someone else. I have a few others, but we might segue into that in a second.
So I guess my question is, it seems, and this was talked about at the planning board, but it seems a little counterintuitive that adding a drive-through will result in less intense use for traffic. And I know you all were prepared to talk about that at the planning board, but they said, we don't need to.
Well, I mean, with respect to trip generations based on a T manual. So I'm not a transportation engineer, but it's simply based on T manual. And so a transportation engineer is going to compare the 2-lane drive-through versus 12,000 square foot of retail or commercial. If you do the math, it'll show you that the commercial produces more. And I'd also say commercial can be open from 7 o'clock until midnight. We're open 9 o'clock until 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on which day of the week. So we're not during AM peak hours, and we're very minimal in PM peak hours. So to me, there's benefit to the city.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I feel like we might have some tensions in the room for this one, and I just kind of, this particular area is probably one of the biggest pain points for our city.
Yes, sir.
And I wasn't on council when this was approved. I wouldn't have approved this so close to the South Point Road, because this is an area that needs to be widened as far as the entire project. I'm not just talking about the bank. So that's why I think this council and the planning and zoning board are asking a lot of questions, right? Because for us, it's bad today, it's gonna be worse tomorrow, right? Until we get these road improvements that we've talked about. So I just want to set the tone on that one real quick. So Jason, I don't know if you have any questions.
Just a minor one. I'm assuming the setback from South Point Road would be the same regardless of the sidewalk design, whether you go with the sidewalk.
Yeah, correct. We can, by code, by the.
So I understand what you could do. Right.
But we chose to push it back. We were trying not to fill the site. And so we pushed it back so I could contour down.
Right.
So we're about 35 feet from each roadway.
But that would remain the same whether you went with the switchback design, which we're saying we're not as in favor of as we would be in the north-south.
Right. And the original design when we submitted it to the city was connecting the sidewalk to the rear. And the city engineer told me to switch back. So then I reversed my design, put a switchback in, and then Mr. Dyer didn't like it. So then we switched back to be agreed, let's interconnect. It was always designed, the sidewalk was turned down. And so if you look at my plan, the resubmittal, we connected it. And we'll stick with that. We'll remove the stipulation about switchback. We don't.
Okay, because I mean, that was why the whole discussion of the planning board was so perplexing to me, because.
And too, you don't understand the cost of doing a switchback.
Yeah, I mean, they were, you all had the idea of the sidewalk, extending the sidewalk, and they were acting like we were putting you out through some overreach, and you were saying, but this is what we.
I get the city engineer though, because
Yeah.
as an engineer, we do land development code and the ADA code, accessibility code. And so if you read the code, by the word, you should do the shortest path, which is a switchback. I understand that.
Yeah.
So we don't object to either.
Okay.
If the city.
So if we said in our conditions, instead of one or the other, if we said you shall do the sidewalk, you'd be fine.
I will, yes, we will accept that.
Okay, great.
Sounds like that's preferred.
Yeah. Sounds like
I
it's
think
purple
that,
bag.
she mentioned the vision plan, which I get. It creates a, circular route for pedestrians. I understand. And if anybody questions why I kind of elongated it, it's because the road's beyond 1 to 20. So if I ran the sidewalk straight, it would be non-ADA compliant. So as I wind it and switch it back, I can go to a higher contour and reduce it to below 1 to 20.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right.
No, I mean, again, I just, again, I understand what's approved, what was approved a couple of years ago. Again, I just want, the level of comfortability that we know that, this widening project, we can still get that in without having potentially.
But we don't know how to get there because we don't control it.
Right.
And the city, I don't know who controls it. DOT is working with the city, working with the county.
Multiple partners, right?
And so you're talking 2, 3, 4 years before those decisions are made.
Right.
Mhm.
And so my concern with that would be in terms of the building location, but I feel like the building location is gonna be so far back that if we ended up needing more right of way, we could deal with it at that time. It's not like what we have on the other side where you've got the.
Demo.
Right, or, well, no, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, with 55 feet, if they had to have if they had to add a right turn lane, you're talking 12 feet. And so could it be done? Yes, it could be done. You could lose your utility strip,
Yeah.
utility strip is the ground.
But as long as the building location that's proposed, I don't think is gonna be a hindrance to that. I don't think that necessarily has to hold us up tonight.
How far back is the dentist office?
It's similar. They're actually using a retaining wall to drop elevation in lieu of downslope.
Right.
So if we can bring an aerial up, but it's very similar.
It looks like
They're all
it would be
very
roughly
similar.
right.
And the other, I think the other building did exactly the same thing with the sidewalk. They brought it down the access drive and went over to the pedestrian connection. So it's very similar to what we're doing.
For which one?
It's, what is it? Is it the dentist or the dentist? So, because what they did was they had a retaining wall in the front.
Mhm.
I feel like if we had to add that other northbound lane and did encroach fully, let's say worst case, on that side of the road, I mean, if they're already set back 35 feet, even to preserve a sidewalk there and add a lane, it's what we've been told is 12 lanes is actually more than what's required, 12 feet rather.
Mhm.
But you could actually come down to 11, 10 and change even. How do you feel about that? Preserving, having 35-foot setback, with what we know and what we've been told about the lane widths and all that, it's through there. I mean, I think that's.
Well, I will say to you, you have a large utility strip, meaning the back of curb, you have at least, looking at this, 6 to 8 feet of grass between that and the sidewalk.
Is it that much? 6 to 8 feet?
The sidewalks is at least 6 feet. So, I mean, you're, at the worst case scenario, you put the back of the turn lane at the back of the sidewalk and that one section, you wouldn't have utility strip.
Right.
And that would minimize how much property you have to take on site.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm satisfied with the actions we've gotten tonight.
Any other questions? Thank you.
And we look forward to building the bank. We do. We're still trying to get this.
We need a restaurant there too, by the way. That last outparcel, everybody in town wants a restaurant. Everybody in town wants a restaurant on that last outparcel. We can park.
I would love if we had one in,
Yeah.
still want one.
All right.
We've got 2 buildings we haven't got one in, and we just, off the record, I love this site.
Microphone.
We took forever, and we thought the greatest thing in the world was got Harris Teeter here.
Well, I've lived there since the time you built that, everything, I've gotten married and I was showing my wife the agenda packet and I was like, this is what it used to look like. It was just all the woods there and she had a hard time even believing what it looked like before, but it's in terms of convenience, it's certainly many convenient aspects to those of us who live in Stoughton.
Y'all don't care, but it took me 5 years to get Harris Teeter on the site. And
That's a big gap.
Yeah.
It's a huge asset.
I'm sorry, I get emotional about it, but I'm there every week, and I've been there every week ever since we opened. Just appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anything further from the staff?
I'm just gonna bring up the slides and.
Okay. Well, if that is the case, then I will entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing?
Motion made by Jason,
Second.
seconded by Alex. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are now out of public hearing, and that leads us to item C6, consider ordinance of approval for ZA 2014-04A, Belmont Town Center Amendment, Fifth Third Bank. And is there anything further from staff on that. We've seen the conditions. It sounds as though they agreed to doing the sidewalk as opposed to the connector, and they would be amenable if that was imposed as a condition.
Yes, so, all the staff has for you is, as a reminder, we need a motion to, it sounds like approve as modified with the modifications requested, and then to make the 2 required findings, and staff wants to remind you that, there has been a lack of an update on this slide, so I do apologize, but the 2 required findings that we're asking council for this evening, are that the zoning map amendment is a reasonable request and in the public's interest, as well as that it is, consistent with goal number 1 and goal number 2, land use and economy.
My only additional questions, if we are extending the existing sidewalk, is said sidewalk adjacent to South Point Road or Stowe Road?
It is actually adjacent to the driveway, so that it doesn't actually have a name, it's the,
Oh.
the drive lanes.
So if we said Stowe Road, would that be,
That
that's
is-
what the condition says?
No, it's the drive lane that's most adjacent to Stowe Road. So,
Okay.
I'll pull.
I just want to make sure it's an accurate description.
So,
Connect south.
we're talking about right here, so
Mhm.
there's this unnamed
Uh-huh,
private
okay.
extended driveway that serves this out parcel as well as this out parcel, and that's where the.
And you consider that adjacent to Stowe Road?
It is the driveway that is most adjacent to Stowe Road.
Okay, well that's,
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're describing correctly.
Absolutely.
And
It
then,
doesn't have a name, which would make it a little bit easier to
oh,
describe.
well, it would. Well, I mean, we've got some requests for naming streets lately, so, you know. And our, in the last sentence of the condition 1K, including but not limited, add the word to the existing sidewalk.
Okay.
But those are my changes. Any other comments, questions?
I mean, just Jason, from where you sat on the Transportation Advisory Committee, I mean, you guys probably feel that that's adequate, the 30 to 35 foot buffer from South Point Road? Because I know y'all have talked about this improvement in detail.
I think so, and again, I'm not the expert, but I know that it sounds like there potentially is going to be more encroachment on the opposite side of the road than there may be on this, on the north side, right?
Right, it seems like there's more conversation about right away on Stowe Road than there is South Point Road. You know, like potential turn lanes if they move the red light from like Red River Run
Or add,
to the, or add to, Stowe Road there, so, but I can't speak from an engineering perspective.
but I mean, worst case, I mean, if we're talking about a 35-foot setback, even if one full lane fell on the north side of the existing South Point Road with the sidewalk, I mean, I would think that's still feasible, in my notice.
We could turn lane 2, potentially 2 on Stowe Road.
Yeah.
All right, if there is no further discussion, I entertain a motion to approve the amendment with the conditions as modified.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment with the conditions as modified.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jason, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I will also entertain a motion that this petition is a reasonable request and in the public interest and consistent with the goals of the adopted comprehensive land use plan and other adopted plans in the areas of land use and economy.
Second.
Well, so somebody's got to make the motion.
Oh, I
I'll
thought you
entertain a
were-
motion
sorry.
along those lines.
I kind of got lost in the readout.
Oh, yes.
I'll make the motion. What do I need to follow that with? Sorry.
You can just say so moved.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Jason, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Tiffany, can we just please check on the Red River Run line code situation?
Yes, absolutely. Staff will make a note to let them know that this project was approved and see if we can get an update for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job, Tiffany. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our last item on the regular agenda is C7, quarterly finance update. And we will turn this over to our finance director, Jared Piles.
Council. I think Cassidy's pulling up the slides. All right, so we'll jump right in. Starting with the general fund revenue. Tax collections, if you notice there off to the right, they are up as a percentage of the year, but that's due to timing. November through January are peak months for tax revenue. So if you recall from the first quarter update, we were behind as a percentage of the year. Now we are ahead as a percentage of the year, and that will taper off throughout the rest of this fiscal year. Intergovernmental revenue includes sales tax, utility franchise tax, alcohol tax, and Powell bill. These are all coming in as expected. Other general fund revenue includes charges for sanitation, fund balance appropriations, permits and fees, and investment earnings, as well as any other miscellaneous revenue. And no issues are noted here as well. Transfer from ARPA is the budget amendment from earlier this year, and that's what we expect to roll into general fund balance. And the non-recurring revenue is general fund paying back paving loan from water sewer. There in the water sewer fund. Any questions? Okay. As well, water sewer charges for services coming in exactly as projected. You see there, 51% and 50% of the year remaining. And other operating revenue in the water sewer fund includes interest on investments, penalties, system development fees, and grants. The other operating revenue is over as a percentage of the year just due to higher than anticipated system development fees, so in good shape in the water sewer fund. As I usually do, I do like to touch on our local option sales tax. Our fiscal year budget for this year is $4,950,000. Revenue as of November 30th, as the December figures are not yet available. I checked the DOR website this morning, but we have total collections of $2,524,302, needing an average of $346,000 per month over the next 7 months to meet budget projections. So,
And what have been our monthly averages over the first 5?
approximately $450,000. But again, this is a volatile revenue source, so
Yes.
we are anticipating meeting budget projections for this fiscal year. We collected approximately $2.2 million at this point last year.
Where did we finish last year again?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to pull that for you. But we certainly met budget projections last year.
I think we were over, right?
Yes,
I think
last
we
year.
were
Yeah.
assuming I was.
Yeah, and then we based our budget this year based on what we were collecting last year. Any other questions on sales tax? We'll get into general fund expenses. Wanted to note a few items here. Sanitation, attorney fees are billed 1 month in arrears, so as it looks like they're behind as a percentage of the year, it's just due to the timing of the invoicing on those. The fire department and capital are both over budget as a percentage of the year, but those are due to large capital purchases, including 2 new fire vehicles and fire truck, including upfitting. Planning is under budget as a percentage of the year, but this is due to not having incurred all the costs related to the comprehensive land use plan update and multimodal transportation network plan. That was related to the budget amendment that we did back in December. Billing is anticipated in the 3rd quarter of this fiscal year. Economic development is on track. In January, we made disbursements to U.S. Cotton and Parkdale Mills, both of which have 1 year remaining on those economic development grants that started, I believe, back in 2017. And again, future capital is that transfer from ARPA anticipated to roll into fund balance. So nothing's actually going to be incurred there. Any questions in the general fund? The water sewer department and the water sewer fund is over as a percentage of the year, and these are due to costs related to the South Belmont wastewater project. No issues noted, it's just front-loaded expenses at this part of the year. Transferred fund balance again, roll into from the ARPA is future capital. Debt service is on track. We have payments related to the AMI infrastructure project, USDA for the City Works building, West Outfall, and state revolving loan for the sewer rehab project. Capital over budget as a percentage of the year, but again, front-loaded costs, we're not anticipating any issues there for the remainder of the year. Any issues or questions with the water sewer fund?
I guess, just when we raised the fees or when we did that analysis, I mean, we're still kind of checking in to see, where we think as revenue and expenses are gonna align, right?
Yeah,
Because the issue why we did that was it was operating in a deficit, right? So we correct the deficit. Are we planning to be spot on to where we're planning?
Yeah, so our revenue projections are spot on, and we also budgeted for our own roll-in into fund balance, into the water sewer fund, approximately $600,000. So you'll have the $600,000 plus the ARPA transfer rolling into fund balance at year end.
Okay, but let's just kind of break that one down though. So when the ARPA is no longer there, right? I mean, we're still gonna be.
It's a one-time roll.
I understand that, but we'll be fine from sustainability. Like, we're not gonna have to go on increased rates again because we're transferring revenue.
I don't want to say that we won't have to increase fees, and the reason I say that is because, we need to discuss the CIP, things are changing, other things may come up, so I don't want to say we'll never increase fees again because operating costs are always changing and things may come up. But in general, we are sticking to that water sewer rate study plan, which did have incremental increases over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right, but with the ARPA funding, it is one time, right?
Sure.
We're allocating that out for this, we're doing whatever, $600K to this. Once we remove that, are we now gonna be at a deficit again, is what I'm trying to get at?
No, because this was not planned originally in this original budget ordinance.
Okay.
So if anything, it's actually increasing our net position.
Thanks, that's what I was trying to get at. It's either gonna be a positive or a negative.
Yeah, it's increasing our net position, and would actually we're trying to build back up that unassigned fund balance, right? So, and that was part of the budget plans from last year, so this only helps on that front.
Okay, thank you.
Stormwater fund is in line with the percentage of the year. Capital is behind as a percentage of the year, with the projects anticipated still to be completed this year are the Woodrow culvert replacement, and the Abington outfall. And those are anticipated to be completed on the back half of this fiscal year. Any questions with stormwater? Okay. And then I do like to show prior year comparisons from last year. So here's a revenue comparison from last year. As you'll see, general fund, water sewer fund, both look to be within that. I use a 5% positive or negative as my barometer of investigation. Both seem to be online as last year. I did note the difference in stormwater, and again, this is just due to that ARPA transfer. That's why you're seeing a little bit of a varied percentage there. Any questions on prior year comparisons? And do the same thing with our expenses. This is, again, just at the fund level. Noted the difference in stormwater, and that's just due to that lack of capital spending at this point of the year, but that will catch up as we move forward in this fiscal year. Any other questions?
Any other questions, Jared?
Thank you, Jared.
I didn't really see any outliers that, were not explainable or anticipated, so nothing, no other issues causing concern for you.
No.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the regular portion of the agenda, which leads us into everyone's favorite section of the meeting, other business. And so we'll start with Jason.
Let's see, I think, just wanted to give one final thanks to our departing fire chief for his many years of service to not just Belmont, but our community around Gaston County. And then also want to thank all of the fire staff that participated this last week and invited us in to participate in their live fire training. I think everybody, that was a real treat for all of us and gave us a glimpse into what these guys and gals have to encounter every day to keep us safe. So thank you all for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Charlie.
Just echoing what Jason said, we all participated in the live fire training exercises, and that was something else. I'd never been in a fire, so that was pretty impressive. impressive, and hats off to you guys that do that day in and day out. It was truly impressive, and thank you for letting us tag along. And then also getting the bucket of that truck and going up about 100 feet. That was pretty cool.
That was Miles' favorite part.
100 feet, yeah. So that was pretty cool. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Charlie. Alex?
Yeah, again, just to echo, thanks to Chief Davis for everything he's done. He's done a great job with the department. Morale's really high, so I appreciate everything and all the contributions he's given to the city. Chief Hardy, good luck in the endeavors as you kind of do that interim position. So
Thank you.
glad for you to be stepping up. And again, thank you for the department themselves for having us out. It was quite the experience. I did have just two kind of things here. So, and maybe we'll get more into it into the retreat, but as far as like the finishing of the compiling of the data into the new comprehensive land use plan, when can we anticipate to kind of dive into that information from what the consultants and the public input that's given?
I don't have an answer. I don't have a system. Yeah, well,
You're on the hot seat.
Tiffany, I was curious, and maybe we'll get more into it to the retreat, but I was curious when we can anticipate to debrief on the comprehensive land use plan from everything that the consultants and the public have kind of put together, and how that should gear kind of Belmont's future vision in our code.
Sure, so staff anticipates a full draft of the comprehensive land use plan from Placerbia on the Placerbia section side in March or early April sometime. That draft is first planning to be reviewed by our planning staff and then disseminated to the technical advisory committee, which includes all the department heads, so that we understand and ensure that the vision is also implementable and how that might have some budget implications that need to be considered throughout the budgeting process.
So when can we anticipate it comes to like council?
Council,
That's
so,
what I'm trying to ask.
So, of course, that's contingent on how much feedback or adjustments might be needed during the review, but we still are anticipating that to be in the summer, late summer, early fall, if not before then.
The only reason why I bring that up is when we reference, this meets goal number 1, goal number 3 of a land plan that was adopted many years ago that, in some instances, in my opinion, doesn't apply to the current situation as it pertains to infrastructure. So, again, time is of the essence of getting that updated so that we can actually reference something that the community has recently given us.
Yes, and we are able to do that. We just wrapped up community engagement for a survey for the multimodal transportation plan, so we appreciate the community's input on that. I want to make sure that the community's input is incorporated into the final draft documents that are able to be reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, second thing that I have maybe more for staff, so in regards to the incident that happened in regards to the Harris Teeter area with the pedestrian, I believe that was struck by the vehicle. We talked about Vision Zero at the last NPO meeting that I was at. NCDOT has just given the county metrics to say we need to reduce, fatalities or crashes and stuff like that by a certain percent. But no one from NCDOT could tell us how they were coming up or arriving to these metrics. And for one, Gaston County has actually never hit these kind of metrics of 30% reduction, 40%. So I don't know if this is something, Mark Stafford had mentioned to me, when these types of incidents happen, we need to reach out to NCDOT to let them know, hey, I don't know, because this again is that painstaking intersection, if we can't use this to put more gas to NCDOT, to have them do something. So I just wanted to call that out.
They've already been alerted, right?
They have been alerted regarding the pedestrian signal that was not functioning correctly. Plus, I believe the police department went and looked at the lights, and I see Arthur shaking his head. And so what the police department saw out there was that there's potential for a new light that covers the intersection there. So we put that on the TAC agenda that's coming up in, I think, 2 weeks from now, maybe next week. The TAC meeting at Division 12 in Shelby. So, the police department did a great job responding to the incident and then compiling all the data and then reaching out to NCDOT.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate staff, that's not directed at staff. What ended up kind of interesting with nothing NPO, all the municipalities kind of turned on NCDOT to say, look, we've got all these situations going, when are we gonna start seeing, positive outcomes or actual projects coming through? I think our municipalities, Cramerton, Mount Holly, Dallas, I mentioned a few in Gastonia, are kind of getting a little frustrated, waiting on a lot of the state funding. So just kind of a heads up. That was kind of how our last NPO meeting went. So, but I appreciate y'all. That's all I have, Jim.
Thank you. I'll echo everyone else's positive experience and gratefulness, gratitude for being allowed to participate in the fire department live training. It was a great experience. I got to go back to my day job and tell my coworkers that I'm sorry I couldn't get back to them right away. I was putting out other fires, literally. So that was just a very memorable experience. I think Charlie and I enjoyed the bucket a little bit more than Miles did. Just a couple of other quick things. I think we all, or so, I know Alex did, and I received a message. Our colleagues in Cramerton have been concerned about some traffic at the area of Carolina Riverside, and we're hoping that the traffic signal that was anticipated for phase 3 of that project, which is several years at a minimum off, could be moved up. And so we've discussed that with the city manager and staff, and I believe an inquiry has been made to DOT about that potentially being moved up if possible.
I don't know about the NCDOT part, but I know that.
Oh, I'm sorry, with the developer.
Yeah, they reached out to the developer.
Yes.
About possibly moving up, and I hadn't heard any results from that conversation at this point.
We have a meeting with the developer tomorrow morning, and I will provide an update.
All right, so yes, meeting with the developer tomorrow morning. We'll see, I'm sure Cramerton would be happy to.
Pass the resolution.
I know, yes, they're very prolific at passing resolutions in Belmont. The only other thing, I've had some complaints again about the train whistles at night. I understand we can't really do a quiet zone. That was looked at, and Chief Falls did a very thorough investigation and memo as to why that's not recommended in light of the public safety issues, but I just wanted to flag those concerns, and I don't know if there's anything besides a quiet zone that could be done to address those concerns, but it remains an issue for some of our downtown residents. That's all I have. With there being nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Hawkdale, near